Hello, all. My name is Kimberly Pierce Cartwright, News and Public Affairs Director at WNCU 90.7 FM. And thank you all for tuning in to our COVID conversations by way of WNCU 90.7 FM. And we're using this platform to talk about how the virus is affecting the way that we live today. And small businesses are suffering under the weight of coronavirus, and some of them are shutting their doors very sadly. I have the pleasure of having as my guest on this edition of COVID Conversations, Krista Norgren and Katie DeCanto, and they're co-owners of a downtown Durham business called the Mothership. Welcome, ladies.
Thanks for having us.
And you're certainly welcome. So I want to start by just getting a definition of what the Mothership is.
So the Mothership is a co-working, event, and retail space, and it's evolved over the past 8 years. It actually used to be two separate businesses, and then with different names and different owner configurations. And then a few years ago, we merged the two businesses into the Mothership. But we have a co-working space and an event space that we rent out and that we use for our own events and our member events. And then we have a retail collective space where members can kind of merchandise their own little spot in the store. So it's a little bit different than a normal like consignment model, and it's all North Carolina brands. So there's a lot happening at the Mothership, or has been historically. And it's been fun as owners because at some point it took on a life of its own, and we didn't even always know what was happening there all the time because the community is pretty vibrant. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Well, I was talking to you guys just a little bit before we started recording to say that I had been at the Mothership to take a writing class, and when I was there were so many people milling around. There were people in the retail space. In the back, there were like lots of couches, and people were on the couches. I don't even think they were doing any work, honestly. I think they were just hanging out and chilling because probably they felt like it was a good space to be in. But can you just talk about the Mothership community? And I'll pose that question to you, Krista.
Yeah, the picture that you're painting feels like such a bygone era where people can gather together in a physical space. But we had a really cool community there. Like Katie mentioned, there were makers and artists who sold in the store. There were people who worked in our workspace that had a variety of different jobs, from remote tech workers to bloggers to students, to artists, writers. And there were also activists and healers who did work in our event space. So it was really a pleasure when we were able to have events that sort of gathered all of those people in one room together. One of our favorite ones was this monthly member brunch that we had, where we gave time for everyone to answer, "How is your heart?" And yeah, just being able to witness the variety of answers and really feel how much is going on in any given person's life. And then when you get to come together and share all those things, it was really, really special. So yeah, I think the range of different people who came in and out of our space was one thing that made it a really exciting place to be.
Yeah, so you guys said that you had been in Durham for 8 years. So when is it that you decided, like, it is time to go, even with sad hearts, I would assume? Katie.
It was it was a conversation, really. It was a decision that was made over a series of conversations. Obviously, like, this isn't something that we would have done on a whim, and really, I think, was motivated by our negotiations with our landlords around the COVID-19 closure, because we closed, when it felt like the safe thing to do in March. We kind of shut everything down to keep our members safe and to keep the public safe. And then as we were figuring out what that meant for our lease, and we were already, our building is set to be developed early next year, and so we already kind of had a end date on our time in that space. And so the more we were discussing what felt like, you know, a really wise, responsible thing to do in terms of our resources and what we could expect and ask of our community, it just felt like trying to hold on to that lease and reopen in that space, especially with the end date looming, it just felt unwise. And so but it took us a while to get there. You know, we had to have a lot of conversations where we were exploring our own feelings on the matter and what risks we were willing to take and what we thought the future held, which like anybody else, we have no idea really what the future holds and when we could open safely. And so anyway, there's so many unknowns. And so we probably made the decision about a month ago, that it just didn't feel good to decide to close, but it felt worse to try to do something so risky as to try to stay open.
So what's going to replace all of that business space down there? Do you have any idea about what kind of business is going to come, or what's the future for the land space?
It's a pretty significant development. We've seen some plans over the years. So when we signed a lease there, it was January 2014, and we only had a 2-year lease initially because the building owner knew that the development was coming, but he didn't, and we didn't, nobody really knew when exactly. And obviously we ended up there a lot longer than the 2 years. So we've seen different plans over the years of what's happening there, but I think more recently, it's like, you know, mixed use, I think, retail, residential, kind of similar to a lot of what else is going on in Durham. And I mean, we've had a pretty good relationship with our landlords, and they've been really communicative about things. And we knew when we moved in that it wasn't going to be our forever home. But we don't know what kind of businesses. Our landlords have expressed hope that we would reopen in that space. We don't know, at least maybe the store, but we don't know the timeline or if that'll make sense when the time comes. But it sounds like they're hoping to get, you know, local businesses in there, although it's hard when you're talking about a big development like that and there's investors involved. A lot of times it's harder to get bank financing without, you know, much bigger tenants and more financially stable tenants, which is the whole catch of downtown gentrification of businesses. And so anyway, we can really just hope that the neighborhood will maintain its delightful like flavor and color that it has right now that we've enjoyed for so many years.
Can you talk to me about the concept for the Mothership, Krista? It seems like to me it's like kind of a wild idea where you just the seed and then, you know, you didn't kind of know what was going to sprout, but hey, the Mothership. So talk to me about the concept of what you guys were thinking about when you decided it would be something that you know, your dreams would come to fruition with it.
Yeah, so it started out as 2 separate businesses, the Makery, which was an online store, and the purpose behind the online store was really to promote and uplift local makers and artisans. And the Mercury Studio, which was a co-working space that was, you know, hoping to really blaze a trail for co-working in Durham, because we are now the oldest co-working space in Durham if you count our time as a business as Mercury Studio. So really introducing people to co-working and providing like a welcoming atmosphere for workers, and their motto was work well, be well. And as we were kind of sister businesses, Katie was a common owner between the two. we kind of aligned around this mission of just supporting people who have wild ideas, like you mentioned, people who are doing work that's sort of off the beaten track and often can't find resources along traditional channels. And so in our mission statement, we say we celebrate work not for its profit potential, but for its contribution to creating what is it exactly?
I think we use the culture of radical acceptance.
And so I think the concept really underlying all of the specifics around like the shop or the co-working space is really just to provide a place where people can discover what their work is and be treated as a human first. And so that was really the underpinning of all of the various things that, like you said, sort of just sprouted off from there.
Mm-hmm. Katie, can we talk about the mothership like pre-COVID? How are you guys doing? Struggling, keeping up? How was it?
That's an interesting question. We had a vibrant community, and we were, paying all of our bills. It was always a little bit tricky because there were 3 of us, and our dream was to be able, for all 3 of us to be able to spend as much time working on the mothership as we wanted and to be able to get paid for that time. But it never really became that. It was more of a part-time gig for just a couple people at a time. And so we did a lot of musical chairs around who's responsible for what and what do we have the budget for and all of that. And so I like to say that we didn't necessarily achieve what we set out to, but in the process we achieved something still pretty wonderful. And even though it wasn't like personally for us as, profitable as we had hoped, it's still, we were in the black from pretty early on. We never went into debt. We were able to always, pay our rent and pay our bills and everything. So in that way, we were a pretty successful business. Whenever we would talk to any, a business consultant, they would say, "You're not in debt, you're paying all your bills." That's a success by most people's standards.
And both of our businesses and the mothership together did an incredible thing, which is bootstrap our way to where we were now. And we relied on Kickstarters and Indiegogos to get, looking back, what felt at the time like a lot of money, like $8,000, $5,000, really an incredibly small amount of money to build what we ended up building. So we were just really, really, really scrappy and able to make a lot happen on very little resources. And so, like Katie said, there were ways in which we were like really, really thriving, and in other ways we were never like flush with cash and having all of the options.
Yeah, you could call us a lot of things, but flush with cash is not one of them.
Yeah, I like scrappy. Sort of like Scrappy Doo, yeah. And get it done. So what do you guys, what's your day job, Katie?
That's another interesting thing about the mothership closing is that so there are 3 of us, Krista and I have a third partner, Megan Bowser, and all 3 of us over the years have really organized our professional lives so that we could have space always for this work. And so none of us have had a full-time job in a long time. And so, but we all kind of have other things to supplement the income, obviously. So I'm a music director at a church in Durham, and I also am a residential landlord. I've been doing some residential house investing since I was like 23, which really helped me be able to have space to do this work. Yeah, and so all of us kind of have, I'll let Krista talk about herself, but Megan is a body worker, massage therapist.
Okay. And Krista?
I nanny part-time, and I also build websites for people.
Very good. So what's the next step? Will we see the mothership as an online site or a blog, or what's the next thing for the mothership?
It's been really hard. Katie has said this well before, but I think we were in a little bit of triage mode as we started making the decisions to shut down. So we weren't able to have all of the conversations that we need to have in terms of like, what's the long-term strategic plan for us? It's just like, okay, we need to let go of the lease on this building because it's creating a huge financial pressure for us to keep up in order to run continuously. So I think in a lot of ways, that's a conversation that's yet to be had amongst the three of us partners and in our community. I think, yeah, we don't know. We're just trying to take it a day at a time at this point.
Also, 8 years is a long time. So I think all of us are a little bit interested in taking a little bit of time and taking advantage of this time to kind of step back and think about what it is we want. Because for so long, we've been scrappy for so long, and being scrappy doesn't always afford you the time to reflect on what you want the future to look like. It's more putting out fires and figuring out how to make the best of what's happening right now. And so I think we're looking forward to taking advantage of this time to really look back on the work that we've done and reflect and appreciate all the good that happened, and maybe do a little bit of grieving of the things that were disappointing to us, and then really develop kind of a new, fresh perspective on what it is that we want, and what of this work we want to carry forward, and what of it we want to end well and lay down.
It came from such a deep place in all of us that I feel, and in our community, I feel like we really connected to a lot of what is core in each person. And so I have a lot of confidence that the work itself is going to continue, but under what name and with who involved seems like it still remains to be seen.
Well, ladies, that's all I have. Is there something that you want to share, maybe that I didn't ask of you?
We have a lot of gratitude for a lot of people. Even though we're closing, I feel grateful that in this closing, I don't feel like bitter grief. I feel like grateful grief. And so I think in general, I just want to express a lot of gratitude for all the people that were part of our community for so long. No matter what happens in the future, it will always mean a lot to me and to us that people trusted us with their ideas and their work and their community life.
Beautiful. Kristen?
Well, I was just going to say, well said. Amen.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm going to miss the Mothership, and I'm going to just really eagerly await whatever this cocoon is going to be for you guys, to see what kind of butterfly emerges after this is all over. So thank you so much for being with me. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. When is the absolute last day for you guys?
We close our lease ends at the end of June. We're hoping to have some kind of memory space celebration, safely, social distance style, before we close, but we're still putting together what that is going to look like exactly.
Okay. Well, let me know.
Will do.
Okay. Nice to meet you. Krista Norgen and Katie DeCanto, co-owners of a beautiful space, the Mothership in downtown Durham. Farewell, ladies, and Godspeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.